The One Church, One Child program was initially administered through the Department of Human Services. That's how it came about. This program was officially adopted by the state of Tennessee in early 1988. And of course, it was not funded, and I don't want to get too much into One Church, One Child, but it was funded in 1989. So we're really talking about the same children, because what we have said and what we're saying through some of our other programs is we know the department realizes that we're going to need the assistance of the black community in finding homes for black children. Certainly the One Church, One Child program is a way of doing that, and some of our other programs are also.
Well, what are some of the, and we want to talk about some of those other programs, Ms. Wallace, but before we get into those other programs, let's look at children who might be waiting to be adopted, but let's look at those who are in foster care, and give me some information relative to who they are and the location, that kind of information. And then perhaps say something about those who are in institutions, you see, and within that framework, so it can give our viewers a better idea and a better understanding of the children that we're talking about here.
Okay. For any child that's placed, before we begin to look for a family for that child has to be ready for adoption. In other words, there is a preparation in helping that child to be able to adjust and moving into what we hope to be a permanent situation. So we have counselors that work with those children and helping them to deal with the fact that they parents, biological parents have given them up, helping them to adjust to any other experiences they might have encountered as a result of having to come into the department's custody and, of course, in our guardianship. So we try very carefully to work with the children related to that. For some of those children, they might need more therapeutic kind of attention. It just really is based on the needs of the children. But again, there is a preparation process, not only for the children and also for those families, so that we can try and make certain that that adoption is going to be as successful as possible.
Very good. Ms. Parham.
And I want to add to the children, there are some sibling groups also in that trying not to separate the groups. So sometimes we'll try to get families to appeal to consider taking on groups of children, maybe 2 or 3 sisters and brothers who we may not want to separate them, but they need to be kept together. And so that is also an appeal when we go through the church. And the other thing I want to add, one of the reasons why the One Church, One Child program was chose, because in our community, a lot of times we will listen to our ministers before we listen to the bureaucrats. And that is one of the reasons why the One Church, One Child program evolved, because we listen to the pastors and they have our ear, and anytime there are problems with our children, from baptizing to marrying to burying to counseling, we usually turn to the African American or black minister. And so that is one of the reasons I just want to emphasize for the One Church, One Child program, and appealing to the needs of those families.
Very good. Ms. Wallace, you also mentioned that there are other programs that the Department of Human Services is currently operating to deal with these children. But before we get to that again, we've talked about foster care, but now who supports these children that are in foster care, and how is that support given? I raise that question because I've heard that in some states there are families that serve as foster families, but they're not in reality the families that have selected the children. But however, explain that to us, because I'm confused.
Okay, our children, we have foster families, and also, since we're just talking about foster families, I should also say that not only are our programs attempting to recruit adoptive parents, we also have a tremendous need for foster families. Foster family, when the child comes into care, into the custody of the department, that child most of those children again are coming to our foster care system. meaning that it's a temporary, it's a holding place for children until they are returned to parents, or until they are, the legal rights of the parents are terminated for whatever reason, and of course they become legally free for adoption.
So while they're in foster care, they really can't be adopted because it's sort of a in-between period between full custody on the part of the state and full, the parents now haven't given up custody, well, for whatever reason.
No, they're in foster care until a more permanent arrangement is made. If an arrangement cannot be worked out, if for whatever problems the family is experiencing, and it becomes very apparent that the family is not going to be able to resume responsibility for those children, that child or those children, then of course, again, the rights are terminated. In some instances, that is done voluntarily by the parent or parents. In some other instances, it has to be through the courts, through the legal system, of course. And once that happens, that child remains in foster care, in that foster home, until that foster parent adopts that child, or until other adoptive parents are found.
Now the state will support that child while that child is in that foster home.
Right. Our foster parents do receive funds for keeping children during this period.
And there's a deficit in terms of identifying those
foster parents, exactly, exactly. Of course, you can imagine how children must feel in having to leave their home, in having to come into that kind of situation. So we're also needing good foster homes, because as healthier environment as you can continue or create for that child, certainly the better off that child is going to be. I need also to say that we have seen, and this is the case across the country, an increase in the number of foster families who are adopting children. Many of the families become very attached to the children. They become very bonded, and we think that is absolutely wonderful, because what happens in that situation is you don't have children continuing to move from one situation to another. And of course, it just helps the adjustment process for that child, and again, having to deal with the separation and loss of biological parents. So we encourage that.
Very good. Ms. Parham,